you definitely have control over the way you think about things. This is a point a lot of people make all the time. You might not have control over what happens to you, but you have control over how you react. And again, it's about perspective. And so if something bad happens to you, you can either throw a fit and curse the universe, or you can, try to work your way through it in the most positive way as possible.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Yo! Hope everyone's having a great day. This is Kyle Fisk, and Boho Hobo is back at it again with another episode of Bindlism, a philosophy to a self-sufficient lifestyle. Today, we met up with a guy named Tom Dillon and had our minds absolutely blown. He's a one-of-a-kind individual who traveled across the country and found inner peace and emotional intelligence along the way. Through his experience as a nomad and outdoor adventurer, he has created a life that allows him to blog about his experience in a deep, introspective way that inspires and enlightens the masses. He's a philosopher at heart who is searching for the truths of the world, and we are beyond grateful to be able to go on this conversational journey with him. Everyone, welcome our newest member of the Boho Hobo and Bindlism community, Tom Dillon. First off, I'd like to say thank you, Tom.
Thank you
for joining us on Bindlism, a philosophy to a self-sufficient lifestyle. My name's Kyle Fisk, and this is Tom. What's your last name, Tom?
Dillon.
Tom Dillon. So the reason why I don't know his name, full name, because we literally reached out to him last night on Instagram, just scrolling through the locations feed for Syracuse, New York. Totally random, saw your Instagram profile. Looked at some of your photos. You're a travel blogger, photographer, big into nature, and we felt like you would be a good fit. You're big into philosophy. And so last night, reached out, sent him a message. And first off, we always talk about like mindset building and the mental strength to just get this podcast in fruition like right now was pretty good. I would say like we reached out last night. We set up the time. You said that you were going to be leaving for New Jersey. And so we were like scrambling. Yeah. We were like, we should just get this going tomorrow.
It was not even 24 hours.
Not even 24 hours. Didn't even know you.
Yeah.
And now we're here and we're doing the podcast. I think that was just like amazing on both of our parts.
Yeah, I'm glad that we could work it out. I was like really close to being like, I don't know if I have time for this, but I don't know, just something felt good about it. And I was really looking forward to sitting down and having a conversation.
Yes, so. Definitely. So first off, you want to introduce yourself?
My name is Tom Dillon. I run a blog. It's called FINDYOURS, www.findyourslife.com, and it's really just about like owning yourself as an individual, finding strength within yourself, owning up to your responsibility to yourself, and it's just about like strengthening yourself from within and sort of building your life on your own, finding the life that you want. It's just like find yours, like find what's right for you. So
and that's the name of the brand, Find Yours.
Yes, yeah.
So people can find you on where on the internet?
I'm on Instagram. Instagram is probably where I'm the most active. At FindYours_life. I post a lot of pictures there from my travels and just my amateur photography. And then you can find the website, www.findyourslife.com. So there's a blog there. I have music suggestions, books that I'm reading, a few blog posts about my experiences and my adventures over the summer.
Okay, so you've been through a lot, like a lot of different travel experiences.
Yeah. Back in June, I quit my jobs to travel the country for 2.5-3 months, and so
what's that been like?
Oh, it was the best time of my life.
Quitting your day job?
Best thing I ever did for myself, honest to goodness. I learned so much about myself and grew, leaps and bounds as an individual. And, aside from all the growth that I had as an individual and all the growth that I felt inside, I got to see the country. I met amazing people. You know, it was incredible.
What were you doing before you quit your job? Well, like, what was your job that you quit?
I was working at Syracuse University as an admissions assistant.
So you're an alumni from Syracuse?
No. I was just working there.
Oh, okay.
And so I was working with graduate students that were trying to apply to our programs and helping them get their applications in, making sure everything was, kosher with their applications. And I was also working at a bar as a bartender and a server.
What bar?
I was really busy. It's called the Notch 8 Cafe and Bar in Jamesville.
Okay.
And
Is that where you're originally from, Jamesville?
I'm from Eastwood.
Oh, okay. Where the skate park is.
Yeah. I grew up in Eastwood, so I'm a Syracuse city boy.
Okay. Born and raised?
Born and raised.
Nice.
Yeah. Though I did live in New York City for 2 years, and I'm moving back tomorrow.
Okay. 2 years, what age?
I was there from 2012 to 2014.
And how old are you now?
So it's been a few years. I'm 29 now.
Oh, okay. So you were probably, what, 22?
Yeah, 22, 24.
You go to college?
I went to SUNY Oneonta.
Oh, okay.
About an hour outside of Binghamton. So yeah, I was just working. I would work all day and then work all night, and that's kind of what I did for 6 months, a year, until finally I just realized my life wasn't going anywhere. Even though I had a good job and I was making money.
What did you go to school for?
Progressing. I was a music industry graduate.
Oh, okay.
So when I lived in New York City previously, I worked in the music business. And but I'm not doing anything. I do play gigs here and there, but I wasn't doing anything music related. I felt like it wasn't growing as a person, and I was just kind of like stuck.
Which is interesting because they tell you go to college
to
like find yourself, and then you'll get a job that you'll love, and everything will be like happily ever after.
Yeah, and that's that's the unfortunate story for a lot of kids. They go and they get into debt, and then they come out and they don't know what to do with themselves, and so
because they haven't had the self-awareness to realize what they actually find passion for.
Yeah, and that's really what the trip was all about. Is like just finding my place and finding my voice and trying to find what I really have to offer, and finding my place in the world and
finding yourself.
Yeah.
Who you are.
Yeah.
And who would you say you are after going through that trip?
Well, the biggest thing that I got out of it was probably maybe not the blog necessarily, but strengthening my writing skills. I always knew I was a good writer, and I just wanted to document the travels, but not in like a travel bloggy way. I wanted to talk about my experiences and how traveling was helping me grow, and
so something more personal.
Yeah, and so I started writing a lot, and that led to me, having some articles published. I just became a contributing writer for New York State Music Magazine, and all of these things kind of came out of me just starting to write about myself and my experiences, and so that was one of the best things that happened this whole
being a part of New York Times.
New York State Music Magazine.
New York State Music.
Yeah. It's a lot of the writers are out of New York City, but it's a New York State, the state as a whole magazine talking about local music, and so that's a really good thing. But I never thought that I was going to seriously pursue writing until I just started doing it, not really with a clear purpose, but a lot of good things ended up coming from it.
What was your perspective on writing in high school?
I always liked
college.
it, and I knew that I was good at it, and I could always write a good essay and do it rather quickly, but I never thought about it very seriously. I just thought that it was a skill that I had, and I never thought that I was going to utilize it the way that I am now, anyways.
So what was kind of the trigger? Or did you have like a light bulb moment where you're like, this is what I want to do now?
I'm not so sure that it's what I am set on doing in the grand scheme, but
Like for the rest of your life?
I knew that I wanted to share my experiences because I know that a lot of people go through or are going through or have been through the same things as me, And it's so important to connect with people, and I found that by writing and sharing that I'm connecting with more and more people. And so I really was just wanted a place to kind of release and really flesh out a lot of these feelings that I had about depression and anxiety, and just the stresses of I don't know, being a post-college graduate and trying to make your way. So that's really how it all started.
I watch a lot of Jordan Peterson. Are you familiar with him?
Of course.
So anyone who doesn't know who he is, he's a clinical psychologist, philosopher, modern day. He's huge on YouTube. Go check him out. But basically, he talks a lot about this whole idea of self-awareness, finding yourself. And he talks a lot about how through writing, it's one of the best methods to be able to think and to formulate your thoughts and to get it out in like a external, practical way. And that's kind of what you're doing. That is what you're doing.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, on my website, one of the books in my recommendations is The 12 Rules for Life.
Oh, nice.
And I
by
did
Jordan Peterson?
By Jordan Peterson. And I actually did his self-authoring program.
Oh, nice.
Which was like one of the best things I ever did. It's a great writing exercise, and I've encouraged a few of my friends to try it out. I bought a code for one of my good friends, and it's just to force yourself to really sit down and write in depth about yourself can be so revealing about who you are, and it does a really good job of covering like every area. From you have to write about your past, the present, and the future. It helps you set up a plan for your life, helps you talk about and delve into problems from your past that maybe you haven't dealt with, and it's like incredibly introspective. And I thought it was one of the most useful things I've done in the last few years. It really, really helped me to know and understand myself and like really grasp some of the things that were getting in the way of me growing as a person. It was really, really helpful.
Yeah, I find that the difference between modern day or public education and like self-education, whether it's like through Jordan Peterson's 12 steps, is that you become more mindful about who you are as a person, and you're able to have personal development through the self-education that it's lacking in the public system. So what was your experience transitioning from quitting your day job to then traveling? What was that like?
It was scary, but in a good way, and I would not suggest that everybody just like quit their jobs. I hope that nobody thinks that I'm like saying, quit your jobs and go.
There's a lot of that out in the social media world.
Yeah, there is, but I don't want to sugarcoat it, and I don't want people to think that they should just like quit and like go travel. It took a lot of planning, budgeting, communication. I mean, it may seem like it's irresponsible, but it requires a lot of dedication and time. You got to know people. You can't just like go for it. And if you don't have some kind of plan for the end of your trip, you can't just do it forever and not have an income, what I mean? And so
you kind of have to flesh out the practicality of it. It's not just as simple as just quit your job and go travel.
I mean, you really got to plan it out, and you got to think about it very seriously, because I almost didn't, because I had a good job at the university. If I had kept going, I could have attended Syracuse University for free. There were a lot of positives to keeping that job, and so I really had to balance it out. And
okay, so let's think about this. So you had one choice, which was stay, and you could have went to college at SU, which would be for.
I wanted to pursue marketing, or even like an MBA, something in like the business, like entrepreneurial field. But I was hoping to go for an MBA. That was my plan for a long time. So I could have either stuck it out and maybe work towards an MBA, and I don't know, 4 years down the road, because I only would have been able to do it part-time as an employee. Or I could just leave. I had plenty of money, and I could go explore, visit all my friends, see places that I've never been, and so that's what I ended up doing.
So what was the tipping point? You had these two paths that were open for you to do. What was that? Did you have a thing that kind of pushed you towards?
Yeah, I actually wrote about this a bit on my website. In one of my first posts, it was like why I quit my jobs to travel, and I talk about this a little bit. I had tried getting a job at Syracuse for about a year. I started applying in January of 2017, and just rejection after rejection after rejection, and it was like so disappointing. And I was like, well, this obviously isn't going to happen. I need to change up my plans a little bit and try a new approach, until finally I decided. I was like, I'm going to move. I'm going to go somewhere else. I'm going to try to start fresh. And as soon as I had the decision in my head that I was going to leave, I got a call from Syracuse saying, we want to interview for this job. So I went and I did the interview, and I was like, okay, this is a good thing. And then when I started doing the job, I quickly realized that it's not what I wanted. But I stuck it out for about 6 months and saved my money until I was ready to just do it.
You were so set on it, and you thought it was like the thing that would, I guess, make you happy. What was the difference of the expectation to actual reality in that situation?
Well, once I started thinking about how it would affect my future, like I was just saying, I would have only been able to take the classes part-time as a full-time employee, and I didn't want to commit to being in Syracuse for the next 4 years, and then by the time I'm done, I'm 34 years old, and then I have to kind of start all over again. And so I knew that I didn't want to be here, and that's really what it came down to.
So it wasn't the job itself, it was just like the lifestyle?
Yeah, it was just what it would have done. I would have had to commit to being in a place that I didn't want to be for longer than I wanted to be there. And so it wasn't the job itself. I worked with good people. It was interesting, and I learned a lot, but it was just the commitment when I knew that I knew that I didn't want to be here, and that was really it.
So how old were you at that time? Just get time frame.
I was 28, so I left in...
And you're 29 now.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
It's only been a year.
It hasn't been. It's been about. I left in June, so it's been 8 months, 9 months now.
Damn.
Since I left Syracuse, and it was all worth it.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it's all about.
Yeah, it was great, but again, I hope nobody thinks that it's a great idea to just like, I'm gonna quit my jobs and travel. You really got to plan it all out and think about what it's worth to you.
So as far as getting more into the practicality of this, quitting your job, going to travel, so how much preparation did it take for you to get to the point of leaving?
Well, I knew that I had to have a substantial amount of savings because I didn't really have any way to make money. So that was the first thing, making sure that I could survive for an extended period of time with no income. I looked at a map and I plotted out all the cities where I had friends, and that's how I mapped out where I was going to go.
So you were like couch surfing through it? A
lot of couch surfing, a lot of floors, a few cities here and there that I didn't have friends in, but I just wanted to go to anyways. A few hostels, a couple hotels, but I really mapped it out based on where I knew people and where I knew that I'd be able to save money by sleeping on a floor or a couch. And
I'm sure that plan didn't go accordingly.
No,
the T.
No, there were a lot of changes along the way. There were some places I had to cut out because I spent too long in this place, or I spent too long in this other place. Like I went to New York City. I was planning on being there for about 4 days. I ended up going there for 2 weeks. I was in Atlanta, Georgia with a friend there for an extra 4 days than I wanted to be. So I had to cut out a few cities here and there. But for the most part, I stayed pretty much on track. For the most part, yeah.
Okay, and I guess we'll jump to the big lesson learned. What would you say from that whole journey, before delving a little bit more into it, was your big lesson learned from that trip?
You definitely learn how much stress you're able to handle. You learn about your limits as well as how limitless you actually are. See, because there were so many things that I'd never done prior to this trip. Like, I'd never done a solo camping trip, and at the end of my trip, I set up a one-person tent and I camped out on top of a plateau in Zion, in Utah, on top of a mountain under the stars. And like,
Damn.
I'd never done anything like that. And
No outdoor adventure growing
I mean,
up?
I've done outdoor adventures, but I've never camped out on a mountain by myself, in the middle of the desert.
Yeah.
And so, it was a boost to my confidence. It was something I always wanted to do. And so I just learned about what I'm able to accomplish on my own. But you also learn about what you can't handle, and you have to learn, about sacrifice. And
What was the biggest sacrifice that you had to make?
um,
Kind of put you on the spot.
no, I've never really thought about that, because, I mean, the biggest sacrifice that you have to make is your income and how am I going to survive, But like, I had planned for that, and I made sure that I wasn't going to be in a tough spot.
Quick caveat, how much did you have to save?
I would say I don't know how much the whole trip cost me in the long run, but I'd say that anybody could do it as long as they don't stay in a hotel every night and eat out every day. They could probably do it on like $3,000, $4,000,
wow.
maybe.
It's not too bad.
Yeah, it's not. As long as you're diligent about your savings and you're responsible, then you can make it happen. But
Which is hard for some people.
yeah, and just again, that's just one of those lessons. It's like, you really have to commit to being responsible and holding yourself responsible.
Accountable.
Because I could have just as easily slept in a hotel every single night and not worried about sleeping on couches and sleeping on the floor. But the trip would have been over in a quarter of the time because I would have went flat broke.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, there's a bunch of things that you.
Were you making money along the journey?
No, not at all. I was gonna work for a friend in South Carolina, but that was one of the cities I had to cut out because I couldn't make it there. But no, I've been working nonstop for, I don't know, since I was 13, 14 years old. I'd never taken an extended break like this. So I really wanted to just make the absolute best of it. So I was like, I'm just going to take 2 months off and just not shirk all responsibility.
No, because just traveling itself is a responsibility.
Yeah, and I started the blog, which led to all of these other things happening. So, I worked on my writing along the way. I built the website. I did all the graphic design. And so, even though I wasn't getting paid for it, it was still something I was doing to, like, build myself and, gather some skills.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And it's like you were thinking about going to school for your MBA and going the public education route. You kind of went the other route, which was more entrepreneurial, and that's kind of like your intent of what you wanted to learn through your MBA.
Right.
But you were able to get it through an independent kind of venture,
Yeah.
we'll say.
It was kind of just shooting from the hip. I really didn't have like a plan. It just kind of came together as it was happening, and I started to formulate the message kind of on the fly.
And what is that message?
It's all about. At first, I was going to do like a travel blog. I was going to document every city along the way, but I didn't want to be that guy that's like, you should check out this pizza place and go to this bakery and taking pictures of food. And I didn't. There's too much of that, and I knew that it was saturated. You can find that information anywhere. I wanted it to be about the journey of self-discovery, and I wanted to, like I touched on before, I wanted to share my experiences and try to connect with people on like a deeper way. And it just happened to be that traveling was the way that I learned about myself, and so I guess you could say it's a travel blog, and I take a lot of pictures through my travels, but it's more of a message of self and
So sharing your story and hopefully inspire others through the story.
Yeah, and one of the biggest things was that, I was going through some pretty bad bouts of depression for many years and anxiety, and it all kind of built up. And when I started to write about these things and share them with other people, and I started to connect with others, and I realized how many people are going through these same things. And so I just thought that through sharing my experiences and how I got out of it, that maybe it would inspire other people to see that they do have strength within themselves to get over their own issues, or maybe they can look to my experiences as an example or success story, I guess you could call it. And I'm just like trying to connect with people that know how I felt and encourage them to do things to make themselves better.
And around about what period of your life did you go through that depression?
Oh, many years. It was like, from middle school all the way up through, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago.
Oh, just before the trip then?
Yeah.
Okay. First off, are you open to like divulging?
Oh, yeah,
okay.
of course.
Okay, so you 13 to what, 26, we'll say?
Yeah. And I don't really know what it was, like where it came from. I grew up with a sense of, it was like self-loathing. I hated myself. I had no confidence. I just always thought I wasn't good enough. And then through a series of external problems, it started to manifest itself within myself. And so I would take situations outside of myself, whether it was a breakup or I don't know, a friendship, toxic friendship or something like that. Mm-hmm. And I would take it and internalize it, and I'm like, well, if this person doesn't think I'm good enough, I'm really not good enough. And it just got worse and worse and worse.
So feelings of worthlessness?
Oh yeah. And like I said, I just hated myself, self-loathing. I was just completely miserable.
And how would you say, comparing to yourself before the trip to now, what's that like?
Completely different, totally different. But it wasn't just the trip that changed everything. It was a
lot of the writing that you were talking about.
It was a lot of work. There was a year and a half before I left where I did a lot of work on myself. I went to therapy every week for a year, talking about my problems, doing some writing, really getting some good introspection, and just facing all of those things head on and trying to understand them. And the trip probably happened because I started feeling so much better and I was gaining confidence. But before that ever was a thought, there was a lot of work that I had to put in.
So even before the trip, you had this fear, this self-loathing you're talking about, and that was you think that it slowly peeled the layers away as you were going through the trip?
Yeah, I think so. Right when I started this road trip, I was feeling tremendously better at that point. But then once I left and was actually on the trip, yeah, I guess that's a good way to say it. The layers started to peel back, and I was discovering so many things about myself. And I guess the trip was really the capstone, or the solidifying,
the catalyst.
Yeah, the solidifying experience that I needed to really be I'm good now, and I feel so, you know what I mean? It was a year of work and a lot of hard work, and then the trip was just I don't know, a celebratory
resolution.
Yeah, whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
And so, just to give a sense of where you were going, you went from New York to where to where?
For the road trip that I took.
Yeah. And it was all by car.
Yeah. It was in my Chevy Cruze, which I just sold, by the way, so I can move to Brooklyn. But I started in Syracuse. I went up to Vermont for a month. I worked my way around the Northeast. From Vermont, Maine, New England, Boston, New York City, all the way down to Virginia, Washington, D.C. And then I came back to Syracuse for my sister was getting married. So I came back, and then after that, I left Syracuse again, went to Chicago, and went all the way down to New Orleans and over to Los Angeles and nice. Everywhere in between. In total, it was about 25, 26 states, I think.
Yeah, I looked at your Instagram. You have like a feed on your scroll bar thing of like all the different locations.
Oh yeah, right. The stories. Yeah, those are all the places that I stopped. And yeah, so New York up through the Northeast. The only area that I didn't get to cover was the Northwest, so Oregon, Washington State, the Dakotas. I didn't get to touch any of that stuff, but pretty much everywhere else.
So were you writing every day?
I tried to do a post a week. Sometimes it'd be maybe 2 a week, but yeah, I tried to write every day, whether it was about the city that I was in. I took a lot of notes on the places that I was in and what I liked about them and the people that I was meeting. But I tried to do about a post a week.
With each post, what was your intention?
Initially, I was thinking, I tried to do this for the entirety of the trip, and it was to talk about things that I learned or lessons that I've learned over the years and how it relates to where I was at the time. And so, as an example, I think it was the second or third post that I had made. I'd actually contracted Lyme's disease.
Oh, shit.
Before I left Syracuse, I was at Green Lakes, and I went for a long hike. And the next day is when I found the tick. There was actually 2 ticks. But it wasn't until a week, 2 weeks later, I was in Boston when the rash started to show up. And I was like, okay. So I had to deal with this Lyme disease thing when I was only on the road for a couple of weeks. Lyme disease can be pretty serious.
Deadly.
So the Lyme rash showed up. I had to deal with, I got to find a doctor. I got to get a prescription.
All in Boston?
How am I going to deal with this? I'm out of state. Am I going to have to go home and deal with this? Am I going to have to go to my doctor? The rash got worse and worse and worse. And so I had to deal with all of this stress and the what ifs and what am I going to do about this. And so the post that I wrote was about how to deal with stressful situations and the lessons that you can learn about dealing with stress. And so I wrote about I just wrote my feelings, what I was feeling when I got this rash and how it's going to deal with Lyme disease, and basically the overarching theme of the post was, see, before, when I was in my self-loathing period where I was really down and depressed, if something like that had happened, I would have cursed the universe and God hates me and why is this happening to me? Just that's the way that you think when you're down and when you're out. And it's just the universe is just aiming an arrow of misfortune right at me. The universe hates me. And what I realized is that if that's the way that you think, if you think that the universe is the source of all of your problems in your life, then you're basically giving up control over yourself.
Powerless.
Yeah, and it's if the universe is doing this to me, then the universe is the only thing that can fix it. And I just don't think that's true at all anymore. And it was just about perspective and the way that you think about your problems and how you can learn and get stronger from unfortunate events, really. And so just in a roundabout, to get back to your question, that was an inspiration for that one specific post that happened while I was on my way. And so when I went from different city to different city, I would think about different lessons and how it related to where I was at that time.
That's pretty cool. You're taking really tragic stuff and turning it around into a positive. And literally anything that happens in your life now, you'll be able to have this blog website where you can write about it and gain some insight.
Yeah.
And find the bad and like convert it into a way that can help other people struggling through it. And so like no matter how bad of shit you're going through, you can always give back in that way.
Yeah,
and you can feel good about it.
Yeah, and I don't mean to like, I'm not saying that like there's not bad things and you can't be upset about certain things happening, but it's a lot easier to get through tough times if you approach it with the right perspective.
And it seems like you've kind of built like this framework to like provide that for you.
Yeah.
To always like approach anything that comes your way.
Yeah.
In a positive light.
Yeah, and that's definitely a significant difference in my life, because anybody that knows me or knew me before any of this knows that I was just a sour grape, like all the time, and just negative and in a bad mood, and just constantly blaming the universe for all of my problems, and so I've really shifted my approach to all that.
So to give us a specific example, so during that time with the Lyme's disease, since we're on that topic, you said that you were going through obviously a lot of stress. Could you share some knowledge as to like some techniques as to what you used to be able to get out of that stress?
While it was happening, like I said before, in the past I would have just been like, this is God hates me, and that's how I would have rationalized everything. But instead of thinking about things that way, I started to question, what have I done to contribute to my current level of suffering? I could have went to the doctor as soon as I saw the tics, but I didn't, because I knew I was leaving in 4 days. So I was like, I'm just going to disregard this. I'm not going to get Lyme's disease. It'll be fine. I could have went to the doctor. I could have had the tics examined. I could have delayed my trip for like another week. I could have got the antibiotics before I left, and it would have been dealt with, and I probably would have never had the problem while I was on the road. And so I realized that maybe it wasn't entirely my own fault. I could have been wearing bug repellent when I went to Green Lakes. I could have taken all the appropriate precautions, wore long pants or maybe long sleeves.
So many ifs, ands, and buts.
I didn't do any of that. So I accepted, most of the responsibility for my current level of suffering. Well, and instead of just blaming, everybody else but me, I recognized what I could have done to make things better. And once I realized that, it was just like it clicked. It was like I have control over myself and what happens to me for the most part. And
damn, that's powerful.
And that's kind of how I was able to deal with it. And then I got the medication that I needed, and it was all good. And I just worked my way through it. And yeah, it sucks. And I got a scar from where the rash is, and it hurt really bad for a few weeks. And it was really stressful, but I came out of it on the other side. It's all good. Yeah, and I'm still here.
Nice. So to wrap that all into this like one little package, you would say the biggest learning point is just taking responsibility, and by feeling like you're in control of all the problems, it gives you that power to power through.
Yeah, and I don't want to say that everybody has 100% control over what happens in their life or to them, but most of the things you definitely have control over the way you think about things. This is a point a lot of people make all the time. You might not have control over what happens to you, but you have control over how you react. And again, it's about perspective. And so if something bad happens to you, you can either throw a fit and curse the universe, or you can try to work your way through it in the most positive way as possible. And so just knowing how you react to certain situations is really helpful. And because I don't know, if something unfortunate happens to you, you might not be able to change the outcome totally, but you can change how you think about anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. So to give people like context of this, because I understand where you're going with this, but maybe as for the viewers that isn't familiar with, because you're talking a lot about CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and it's all about thoughts, emotions, behavior. So let me just like play out a scenario for you, and then
Yeah.
you can kind of talk it through
Yeah.
as to how you process. So, like, let's say you're going through your day and you just got into a car accident. So that happens. How would you process?
Actually, this happened. 2 weeks after I bought my car, my neighbor across the street backed into my car while I was parked on the street. And I had a huge dent in my driver's side door. My brand new car that I just bought. And I looked out the window one morning. I thought it was a ticket on my windshield, but it was actually a note from the neighbor saying, sorry, give me a call later and we'll get it all worked out. And it all worked out fine. And I remember at that time when that happened, I remember going down to my car and standing there and looking at this huge dent that was in my brand new car. And
Like,
I
fuck
was,
the universe.
oh my God, I was ready to get so mad and just like scream. But I was like, you know what? This is not the worst thing that's ever happened. Like,
Perspective.
it's just my car. Like, I don't have any broken limbs. I wasn't even in the car when it happened. It's not going to cost me any money to get it fixed, which it didn't.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there was nothing bad happened to me in that situation.
It was just material goods.
Yeah, it was just a dent in my car, and it all got taken care of. I got a rental. Her insurance paid for it. She was nice enough to actually leave a note and own up to the accident. I guess if I were in the car, you might think about it a little bit differently. If, I don't know, I'd ended up with a broken limb or something. That's not great, but a broken limb is better than a dead heartbeat. So
True. So you just keep pushing until you can't push anymore.
Yeah. It's just all about the way you think about things, man. You gotta just try to spin it and try not to be so bitter and resentful about things.
And that's so easy to do.
Yeah, and it wasn't the worst. It wasn't the worst thing. It could have been so much worse. So it's just, you just got to think about it in the right way.
Yeah, and definitely disclaimer, this is a hard technique to be able to put into practical
Especially when
application.
you're like down in it. Like when some people are when you're in it and you're so far in it, it's so hard to think about things like this.
Objectifying everything.
Yeah, because like when you're depressed, you just like everything just sucks so bad, and it's so hard to have that change in mindset. And like I said, it took me a lot of work, a year, and it was slow, and I had to do, it didn't happen overnight. And so I know that it's hard. I know that it's really hard, but if you work on it and you're persistent, you can get to the right place.
And what would you say the payout is? Because of how much work you're putting into this, right? It's like grueling to be able to go through that experience and like think about everything in that kind of way.
Yeah.
Like why even do it then if it's so hard?
Right. Well, I would say that, the number one thing that's come out of everything is that my life hasn't really changed that much externally. I'm working at that same bar, and some good things are happening. I'm moving to New York and getting a good job. But ever since I've been back in Syracuse, things have more or less been the same, but I'm happy internally. That's the biggest thing, is that I went from hating myself 2 years ago, 3 years ago, to now I don't.
Powerful.
I love myself. I'm happy inside. I'm happy with who I am. And anything that happens externally, it's just additional happiness on top of that. And so, I don't know, on the inside, everything is just so completely different. And I guess hindsight is 20/20, but I see now the difference in who I was and who I am now. And
That's
it was
fucking
all
huge,
worth it.
dude.
It was all worth it.
Like it's even more beautiful by you saying like I came back home and nothing's changed.
Yeah.
But like that internal, man.
Yeah.
Because like you're taking the same exact situation, but you've grown so much internally that you can flip the switch. You can literally be like, I'm unhappy, but now I'm not.
Yeah.
And you literally have control over your emotions by having that introspection that you did.
Yeah, it was a big change. I cannot underscore it enough. Like, it took a lot of hard work and like really facing my issues head on, and like it's hard. It's really hard to think about all your shit, you know? Like, most people just want to bury it, and they don't want to confront the problems in their life. But it's worth it. It was worth it to me, and you know, it's worth it to people that I know that have gone through the same things.
Because now you have a strong mindset that'll take you through life in any situation.
Yeah. And now I know how to cope with things, and I know, you know, the coping mechanisms, or whatever you want to call them. I understand the things that make me upset, and now that I see how I used to handle things, and I can objectively see myself, you know, from the outside, the person that I used to be, and now that I know the difference, it's so much easier to just side with the happy person and side with the person that's positive and like wants to be good, wants to be a good person, and wants to aim high, than it is to side with the person that just hates themselves and is like miserably walking through life, you know.
Because it spreads to other people. You're just like a walking, ticking time bomb, you know.
And this is something that, I mean, if you've read Jordan Peterson, you probably understand. And this is a big part of my message as well, is that I'm convinced that the way to make the world a better place is to make yourself a better person, you know, because I don't have much control over the grand scheme and what happens in like economic systems, and like, you know, there's a lot of injustices in the world, and I don't, you know, I understand that, but I don't have a whole lot of control over that. All that I really have control over is myself being a good person, and, you know, being positive, and just trying to like live as honest and honorably as I can. And the more that I do that, and the more that I pursue like a positive and honest lifestyle, the more it'll resonate with people around me. And I wrote about this in another post when last year I started working with a nutritionist, and I was working out a lot. I did P90X. I lost like 30 pounds, and I got in the best shape of my life, and it was like awesome. And people around me, they noticed, and they're like, "Oh my God, you're inspiring me. Like, I want to go to the gym." And like, all these people were messaging me about how inspiring it was. And I didn't do it because I wanted to like inspire other people. I just wanted to like be healthy, and like I wanted to feel good. But it inspired other people. Do you know what I'm saying? It's
like it just happened to be so. Like your intentions was to just be a healthy person, but it happened to be that other people were able to get benefit from it too.
Yeah. And I don't know, it just started to kind of like work itself out. And so this is something that Jordan Peterson talks about a lot, is that if you pursue being good and being honest and being honorable, it'll make your life better, but it'll make the lives of people around you better.
Because all you're doing is spreading positivity.
Right. And so that's a big thing that I have, is just like the better that I am, you know, I can only hope that the people immediately around me will want to be better as well. And, you know, most of them will want to be. And I just really think that it all starts with you. It starts internally. And that's just, you know, my approach to making significant change anyways.
So to go back a little bit, you were talking a lot about like fuck the universe, and you're putting in the context of the universe. I'm just curious, what's like your belief system, if you have one? Like you come from
I was born and raised Catholic. You know, I was baptized and confirmed, but I don't know, I can't really get down with organized religion. I can appreciate the message of all religions, because I believe at the end of the day it's all the same. You know, it's all the same message, just different interpretations, you know, and different traditions. So I'm not really into organized religion, like going to church and taking part in like, you know, all of the what are they called, rituals or whatever. But I believe in being a good person and being honest, and you know, living your life honorably, not cheating, not lying, you know, the basic principles of moral life. But there are I'm into meditation, and I studied Eastern philosophy when I was in college, and that kind of stuff really resonated with me. But
It's more of a lifestyle when you approach it that way.
yeah,
Well,
I try to
from
look at
what I've seen.
the philosophies as opposed to the religions. You know, something
To get
about-
like general understandings of the principles.
Yeah, and for me at least, Buddhism and Taoism and Eastern philosophy seem to resonate with me the most because they stress the philosophy, I think, a little bit more than the religious aspect, or maybe I just haven't studied the religious aspect of Buddhism and Taoism enough. But yeah, I don't know. I kind of just believe in all of it.
The Eastern religions, we'll call them, or philosophies, they seem to like approach it more as like a way of life, whereas like
Yeah.
Catholicism approaches as like it seems more black and white,
Yeah.
more like this is the things you should be doing, and if you're not doing that, then you'll go to hell.
Yeah, I would agree. Over the years, I think Catholicism has built all of these rules. What you can,
rules. That's
what,
a good way.
What you can and you can't do.
Frameworks.
Outside of like the Ten Commandments, which I believe is a good set of rules, but then they have all of these other rules.
So I think I've been thinking about this a lot lately, but the I don't want to say the problem, but the hang up that we get from following religion is that it's an external source telling you what you should be doing, and it creates this feeling of like puppy dogging or like following the pack or following the guidance, and so you're constantly getting this strive for the guidance or whatever's being told, instead of like what you went through, which is like a self-discovery journey that was more introspective, and like you were able to make sense of the philosophies, but in this own personal way.
Yeah, and yeah, I would say that's like a good analysis, because a lot of really religious people, and I don't mean to like talk bad or talk down to people who practice different religions or whatever. I think it's important to have faith. But when you're aiming to please an external source, and you're just
Like all hell.
Like living by the code just because this is what, I don't know, the bearded man in the sky tells you what to do, for lack of a better way to say it, I guess. I don't know, it puts you in a position, like it almost makes you like stuck, because
you haven't taken responsibility of your life. You're putting responsibility in the beholder or the creator, whatever that may be.
Yeah. Well, it's not only that. I think it's just about like, I don't know, aiming to please. You know what I mean? Like aiming to
do what you've been told.
Yeah. And not that you shouldn't aim. I think a lot of the rules outlined in religions are good. I just said that the Ten Commandments, I think, are good rules. But when you start like thinking, oh, if I don't go to church on Sunday, I'm gonna be, smited. I don't know. There's just certain parts about it that are a little bit off to me. And
it seems like it renders people powerless.
And the other thing is they start to miss the point.
It gets twisted.
It's like you're so focused on these like little rules and like, am I going to go to hell and whatever, that you completely miss the whole point of all of it, which is to be a good person, live honestly, live honorably.
The intentions.
Don't hurt people, and yeah, all of that stuff.
Crazy.
Like the main points of these faith systems get missed, and I think that's pretty unfortunate.
It's almost like, again, obviously from this conversation you can see where we're coming at with our beliefs. Again, if anyone out there wants to have the debate over the creator of the world, come on the show and we'll talk about it, because that's definitely a good conversation to be had, to see other people's perspectives. But to go back to what we were talking about, it almost seems as if like if you do give the power to the creator, then like we said, it causes you to be more powerless because you're taking your power away and giving it to something else. But by doing that, you're giving them the choice. You're also giving them how your life is going to be run. So instead of looking inward and being like, okay, now what is it that I can take control of and responsibility, you're instead saying, God, what are you responsible for? How can you change my life? What can you do for me?
Yeah, and a lot of people say this, like, well, this is what God wants, and I'm leaving it up to God. And look, I want to stress this. I don't want to, like, talk down about anybody's belief systems, and, like, you do what works for you. And
this is more like an analysis, I would say.
Okay, I guess we can use the same example that you used before. You get in a car accident, and I don't know, you break a limb or something like that. Maybe that's not a great example, but it's like, well, this is the way that God wants it, or this is the way. You see where I'm going with this? Like, this is what's supposed to happen. I'm just, like, trusting in God, and
then you don't do anything about it.
I just don't see. It's not that I can't appreciate. I can appreciate, people having faith and having trust in their faith. But I feel like there's a difference between that and so you can change your life if you want to, and you don't have to rely on, like, the power of the universe. And that's really my point. It's like you can control your life, and I think there's a healthy balance between that and still having faith and, like, having a belief system. And I don't know. I don't think it has to be as, like, rigid as it is.
More personalized, maybe.
Yeah.
Which is really hard to achieve.
Yeah.
And something that's fundamental and, like, rule based as religion can be. So, like, thinking about, like, how you approached religion before, when you were talking about, like, fuck the universe, like, this is all your fault. So that approach, it was a situation where you were giving the creator power again, because you're saying, fuck the creator, he did this to me. So that was you saying that, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but that creator had the control to cause your life to be this way. Whereas you could spin that, still holding the philosophical beliefs of, like, let's say Christianity, with a creator being there, but you could say anything positive that happened in your life. Oh, thank you, God. You were the reason why this is happening. I was able to get a new car, or my leg is healed, or something like that. So it's still giving the power to the creator, but you're flipping it in a positive way. And I could see that being effective, but it's not one or the other. It's like, if you're giving power to the creator, he has the choice to say it's positive and negative.
Right, and you just made me think of one point that I was trying to get at before, is that, like, when I was in that mindset where it's like, God hates me, whatever, then I would just be waiting around for him to fix it. And I wasn't doing anything on my own. It was just like, well, if God hates me, I don't have any control, so I just need to wait for him to, like, fix all my problems. And then I would just sit around, I would lay around.
Puts you on the defense.
And be miserable, and I would just wait and wait and wait for something to happen, instead of taking control and making things happen for myself, And so I think that's the biggest problem that I've been trying to nail down and get to, is that there's nothing wrong with, like, having faith, and I'm a faithful person and spiritual, but I understand that my life is up to me, and not everything. I don't have control over everything that happens to me. I mean, I can't control whether I, like, get cancer or not. Obviously, there are things that happen that I can't control, but for the most part, where I want to be, where I want to live, what I want to do, the information that I want to take in, who I want to surround myself with, who I want to be friends with, those are all things that I have total control over.
And how you react to the situations.
And how you react to them. If I'm unhappy in a relationship, if I'm miserable, I can leave that relationship. If I don't, feel close to the friends that I'm hanging out with, I don't have to hang out with them. If I don't like the city that I'm living in, I can move somewhere else. If I don't like my job, I can quit. There's so many things that you have control over, and a lot of times people make excuses. Well, I can't leave my job, and I'm not going to be able to find anything else, and there may be some truth to that sometimes, but for the most part, we have a lot of control over the way our lives play out.
Basically, like taking that entire story of what you're talking about and boiling it down, it seems to me that what you're saying is it doesn't matter what philosophy or religion you're following, but if it's enriching for the control over your own life to better yourself and the ones around you, then that's good enough. As long as it's empowering instead of disempowering.
Yeah.
Then
I would agree.
That would be a good philosophy to live by, we'll say.
Yeah, and like I had said before, I think if you just follow the underlying, not rules, but the underlying philosophy of any of these faith-based systems, be good, don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal. I mean, they all, for the most part, have the same underpinnings. As long as that those points don't get looked over, I think faith and religion is a good thing ultimately. But it's just like the important, like the meat and potatoes gets missed.
It gets mushy.
Yeah,
it really does, and that's
and
hard.
People stress these weird parts of religion.
They take what they want to hear.
They have that make no sense to, like, I don't know. I'm hesitant to like use examples, but like, I don't know, these like TV preachers that you see, with the, I don't know, sneak tongue or whatever it is, like the gibberish, you see these guys on TV and they go, and I don't know what their motives are. I don't know if it's about money or what it's about, but it just seems like their approach is just way off base with what the teachings were originally, trying to give out. You know what I mean?
And that's the hard part with religion, philosophy being so old, is it can get out of context real quick. Yeah. And especially through writing. Like, think about if you read Harry Potter or whatever, you could take bits and pieces and create a different story out of context. Yeah. That's kind of what they're doing. Yeah. Well, I don't really know specifically who you're talking about, but yeah, I would say that would be... It all comes down to, like, maybe critically think. Try to see it for what it is instead of what they're telling you. I don't know.
I just think that, there are core principles that are more important than the rest of the stuff. There's all this fluff, and then people just miss the point.
It's like they teach you in school all the time, don't take all your facts from one source. I try to diversify the variety of other sources so then you can create your own opinion. And that's kind of what you did, reading so much philosophy and getting a solid foundation background of everything.
Yeah, I really try to not, like, just as you were saying, approach things from, like, the singular perspective. I try to take in as much info as I can and, like, really rationally think about things and, I don't know, come to my own conclusion based on, like, a variety of conflicting pieces of information,
Getting back to your story a little bit. So you were saying that you came back to Syracuse and nothing was really monumentally changed. But the one thing that was changed was your mindset on how you approached everything. Does that take us all the way to now?
Yeah, right up to now. So let's see. I came back in the beginning of November, and I had to stay with my folks for a little bit, and I went back to working at the restaurant that I was working at before I left. And so if anything, I mean, things had changed. I didn't have my own apartment anymore, so I was living with my parents again at almost 30 years old. And working the same job. But I don't know. I had learned so much in the previous 6 months that, I couldn't let myself be the same person I was when I left. Yeah, and things are better than ever now. I mean, things are just continuously on the up and up.
So like a different approach.
Oh yeah, I can't even tell you how much different things are now, and I'm just so happy and thankful that I've been able to come out of this on the other side and think about things differently, because I don't know, things just seem to be getting better and better by the day, and even if they weren't, I just know that like I'm okay, like everything's okay, everything's fine. And sure, there's different stressful situations and there's always going to be stressors, but for the most part, like, it's okay, like everything's
knowing you're
okay.
confident in being able to get through it all.
Yeah, and I don't have the anxiety that I used to have of like what might happen 6 months down the road, and like I used to just run through all of like the bad possibilities and like negative consequences. Like none of that anymore. I just like I focus on what I can get done today, how I can be better today, and work towards tomorrow, and just one step at a time, just keep it moving.
It's almost a good thing that nothing changed, because now you're taking the same situation that was before and how you reacted to that situation, same situation, but now you see the difference. And that in itself is huge growth.
Yeah.
So, fuck yeah, man.
Yeah, dude, it's been
that's cool.
Just awesome, and I wish more people would take to like really thinking about how important they are as an individual, and like really working towards. One thing I noticed especially through the last 2 years, and I was thinking about this a lot last week, is that too many people are so focused on like bringing others down and like knocking on other people's shit and like trying to destroy other people. And the way that I was thinking about it was with the president, and I don't want this to turn into like a political, whatever. I don't really have anything to say about the guy, but like a lot of people just like every single day on Facebook or Twitter or whatever it is, every day they got something to say. And it's like, whether you like him or not, like it doesn't matter. Like you should be taking that time and energy and working on making yourself better instead of trying to make somebody else worse. Do you know what I mean? And maybe that's not a great example because too many people have opinions about that. But how can you spend your energy every day, all day, thinking about trying to just like ruin somebody else? You should be taking that time and looking inward and just like, what can I do to be better? Because at least I have control over that.
That's the only thing you can have control over.
Yeah, and so.
Well, you can control anything that you can be 100% certain that you do have control over is the mindset, what you're thinking about.
Yeah. But again, it's just like I said earlier, I think the way to better the world is to better yourself. And I don't think anybody's doing anybody a service by just being negative with the negative comments, trying to bring other people down on a daily basis. It's just like, try to be a good person yourself. If somebody else is a bad person, I don't know, screw that person. You don't have control over what they do. You have control over how good of a person you are. So every day you should just be aiming to be good, be positive, be honest, be honorable, and again, it'll work itself outward like we were talking about before. And so that's probably one of the biggest things that I'm trying to convey, is that it's just like enough with like trying to bring other people down. Just like it's constant, you can't get away from it, and it puts other people in a bad mood. It's like when you see negativity all day, it makes you feel negative, and it's just like enough. And so trying to disconnect from all that.
Why do you think that is? To kind of challenge your thinking.
Why people want to bring other people down?
Well,
a lot of people disagree with what he has to say or what he's doing, and I'm not trying to downplay anybody's like viewpoints or what they think is important, because I think that you should fight for issues that you think are important. But what I'm talking about is just like the consumption of all of your time by like hating something or somebody. Not even talking about the president anymore. I'm just mean in general. Of like, if you spend all your time absorbed in how much you dislike something or disagree with something or somebody, and all of your time is spent in a negative space, trying to like drag it down or bring it down, that you're stealing time from yourself where you could be building yourself up and doing something positive, you know? So just using me as an example, I don't know, I used to be like really jealous and envious of successful people, and I would make excuses, well, they're not even like that good, and yada yada yada. And I started to let go of it and started to focus more on me and what I can do to be better, instead of trying to bring other people's success down or making them look worse. Do you see where I'm getting at? And so
like having the insecurities in you is kind of like what wants you to bring other people down to make you feel more secure.
Yeah, I guess. And I don't think that that's everybody's motive, but I think that's a big part of it. And
a lot of times you don't even realize either.
Yeah.
And that's a scary part.
Yeah. And so I don't know. I think the answer is not to, go try to be a keyboard warrior, I guess. And it's like, it's like
trolling.
How many people on Twitter like actually think that your comment is going to make a difference? I don't know. It's just like, you're better off, I don't know, going out and going for a mile run or something. You know what I mean? Just like something that'll make you feel good, make other people feel good. You just want to try to get in more of a positive space. And so I hope that all makes sense, because I don't mean it in like a...
It can get twisted real quick.
Yeah.
And so and I think because of allowing you to talk through the story, you're able to contextualize what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
And I think it basically just boils down to maybe this could go in a totally different caveated way, but like understanding yourself before you try to make judgments over other people.
Yeah, walk a mile and, what's the saying? I don't know, before you judge a man, walk a mile in his shoes or whatever. I think that's kind of where you're getting at, or it's like, or before you accuse me, take a look at yourself, that kind of thing. And I mean, sorry, not to interrupt. I thought that's kind of where you were going.
Yeah, and to give you background, I'm actually a mental health nurse, a mental health substance abuse nurse. So that's what I do for my career. So I do the podcast and boho hobo, and then as my day job, I do mental health. And I've been studying a lot about this stuff, and I mean, very thankful and grateful to have this conversation, because it aligns a lot with what I've been learning. But this is all these topics of being self-aware over your emotions and being able to control them and control your behavior. It's all emotional intelligence. Like, that's the overarching term of all this. Are you familiar with that term at all?
Maybe. I'm trying to think of... I guess I haven't really read too much about it, no. But
well, now you have
just
the word.
saying it, I mean, makes sense, because a lot of people don't understand their emotions at all, And I think it's important to have emotional intelligence and be able to understand what makes you feel certain ways, why it makes you feel that way. And once you understand those, it's a lot easier to control them.
Yeah, definitely. So moving forward now that we're coming to where you are present day, do you have any big ideas moving forward, big projects? I'm moving to Brooklyn tomorrow. I'm going to try to get back in the music business. I have a couple things lined up.
interview-wise there. And other than that, this year I'm just really focused on building my brand, keep writing, try to build the blog, get more exposure, work on the Instagram, and I'm hoping that I'll be able to talk with more people and collaborate and maybe get some other writers that can write about their experiences, because I don't really want it to be all about me. I want other people to share their experiences as well, and just keep working on the message, try to make the message as strong as I can, and aim to help people. I really hope that people are able to take something positive away from whatever they choose to read on the website, or I hope they can connect with it enough that it'll make them feel good and inspire them to institute some changes in their own life. And so this year just working on the brand, trying to make the message stronger,
which brings us to the ending of our podcast. So if you want to, in a quick 2-sentence way, summarize what your message is and communicate that to the people. Find Yours is just all about finding yourself as an individual, strengthen yourself as an individual, and understanding the importance that you have as a unique person, and owning up to yourself, taking control of your life, and getting yourself where you want to be by owning up to yourself. Glad to have you.
Hey, thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Fuck yeah. Thanks again to everyone who was a part of this podcast journey towards enlightenment. Tom Dillon has a philosophical way to question reality in a different perspective and gives us insight into our emotions and everyday behavior. We wish him the best on this journey through life. After hearing his story, he definitely provides hope for anyone out there who's struggling with negative mental health, that there is an opportunity to get through it and become a stronger individual because of the hardship. Tom Dillon is a testament to how self-actualization can be achieved. Thank you, Tom, for opening yourself up to a level of vulnerability that allows you to share your truth and insight to the world. The world is a more positive place because of it. Peace.